The Dynamite 5th anniversary show is now a thing of the past, and that means we're going to review it right here, right now on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Hi, I'm Mr. Warren Hayes. Hi. I don't know what that was about. We're not doing this over. We hope you're having a great week so far. I hope things are going your way. Hope it's going your way as much as it's going Tony Khan's way these days. Holy smokes. We're going to get into all of this. Look, just as a preface, we're going to review the Dynamite show. That's what we're here for. That's exactly that's the name of the thing that we're doing here, right? We are going to be breaking down this week's edition of AEW Dynamite. But I will be remiss if I don't talk about the media deal. Like, that would be doing a great disservice to you. It would be just irresponsible, I think, at this point. But I won't be going in too much detail. We're going to talk about it. We're going to set the stage, but I will be talking about this on other occasions right here on the channel. For instance, I am going to be, if you're listening to this on the Thursday, which is when we record and when this is released, if you're listening to this on Thursday, we'll know that on tonight's stream, on the live stream on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes, I will be getting into the weeds a little more. I also have someone lined up. Hopefully it works out. Like, I learned my lesson last time to sort of promise guests, and then they flake out on you. So I'm not doing that again. But normally I'd have someone lined up to join me for the podcast, to break down in a little more detail what's going on. So or what the deal represents, because we know what's going on. More like what the deal represents. So make note of that. I'm telling you, there's not a better time right now than to subscribe or follow the Mr. Warren Hayes Show on YouTube or on your favorite podcast application. There's so much stuff coming out. Look, right now I'm streaming 3 to 4 times a week. And there's a lot of stuff happening there. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it to the podcast. So if you want to jump in on those, well, you go subscribe there. And maybe you're just like super happy receiving these edited, trimmed down podcasts right here like this one, and you want to stick to that, and that's fine too. Continue down that road. I'm just saying, there's many possibilities, many opportunities for you to, get all the Warren content that your heart desires, essentially. And what does my heart desire right now? It desires to get into the 5th anniversary Dynamite that happened on October 2nd, 2024, from the Petersen Events Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 4,425 tickets ended up being distributed. The past couple of days again have shown have got a good boost of ticket sales. Got over the 4,000 person hump. We were inching close to 5,000. I was sitting around wondering, are they going to make it to 5,000? Didn't quite make it there, but still pretty good and better than the last time that Dynamite went to that venue, which was in November 25th last year. 3,533 people showed up at the Petersen Events Center for a Collision. So it did better, but then again, this was the 5th anniversary show. Slap on a couple of big matches there, then it should do better than, a Collision taping, back a couple of months ago. So of course, that should be better. But you know what? Today we're not going to do the usual breaking down of attendance. We're not going to harp on that any longer, because I want to, like I mentioned, I want to talk about the deal just a little bit. We need to put that out there. It needs to be here, and it is the big story. Anyone doing AEW coverage has to be talking about this. So it happened. essentially. It happened. Months and months of anxiety. AEW fans, I'm looking at you, the freakazoids. I'm looking at you. Months and months of anxiety have finally come to an end as AEW has signed a new multi-year multimedia rights deal with Warner Bros. Discovery. In the press release, the deal said the deal was valued at over $150 million per year, though actual financial terms were not disclosed. Neither the length of the deal or the amount of money, other than saying, well, and these were sources basically saying, well, it's well over 150 million. 150 million was the baseline, but it was more than that. And a lot of people just ran with it and said, 150 million fail. We were saying 170 million. But people can't read, on one end. And second of all, there's still many bad faith actors out there. So it goes both ways, right? It's just like, you sort of wish people would have reading comprehension above third grade at this stage, but there's still a lot of children out there, and there's a lot of dummies. So AEW Dynamite and Collision are going to continue airing on TBS and TNT respectively, and the big news I think that got a lot of people excited is that starting in January 2025, Collision and Dynamite will stream live on Max in the United States, of course. And will also be available on demand, and I think that's a big deal. It's even been underscored that it was going to be broadcast live even on the West Coast, so there won't be the typical 3-hour delay. People in the West Coast will then be able to watch Dynamite at 5 p.m. then. So that's tremendous news. The deal includes enhanced social media distribution and potential new programming on linear digital platforms, so keeping those doors open. AEW pay-per-views will be available on Max in 2025 at a discounted price. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting as well. There's been a lot of wrangling since then. A lot of people had been started reaching out to their sources for some clarity in regards to how exactly this was going to work. And from all intents and purposes, it seems like it's going to be the UFC ESPN deal, where basically you pay your subscription to Max, and then you will get the pay-per-views at a discounted price. What is it discounted from? Well, from the regular pay-per-view price, which will be still available on other sources than Max. You will be able to pay. You will still be able to purchase on Triller by Fight or ppv.com or YouTube, whatever services that AEW will continue using for their pay-per-view business. You will still be able to buy them there, but at the full price. Whereas if you're in the United States, you'll be able to get it at a discounted price. Now, how discounted is it? Well, we're going to find out later this year. But this is good. This is interesting. And it's very interesting to me. And again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds because we will be talking about this on other occasions. What I find really interesting here is that this means that AEW is not losing out on revenue when it comes to the pay-per-view side of things. I think a lot of us were kind of expecting for the pay-per-views to end up on Max, period, but maybe not without, but maybe without an extra cost tacked onto it, right? So like you'd pay your whatever it costs for Max per month. I don't know. I'm in Canada. We don't have it. So like whatever it costs to subscribe to Max, and then you just have the pay-per-views in there, not unlike on Peacock with WWE. That would have probably meant that WBD would have paid AEW upfront a certain amount of money to buy the pay-per-views essentially, but then all the revenue would stay with Max. In this case, there's still a pay-per-view component that continues to belong to AEW, which is very interesting. They will continue to make money themselves, whether it's outside of the Max ecosystem or even within, where I guess maybe they will continue to have like some money. You would assume that the pay-per-view amounts that are happening on Max would just go straight to Max. I don't know. But the point is that AEW is still going to be making money off of pay-per-view regardless. Regardless of what the split is for pay-per-view purchases on Max, AEW is still making money outside of it. Is still making money outside of Max by selling pay-per-views on the other platforms that they've been using. Dave Meltzer added some news here to all of this. Said that Rampage is going to be discontinued, is what he reported, and that the company is shopping around the new Shockwave show to other networks. Of course, there's a lot of speculation that it's going to be ending up on Fox and on Fox proper. On top of that, like broadcast Fox. We'll have to keep an eye on that. That's, I think Dave wrote something about that yesterday in the lead up, and then obviously this was all lost in the jumble and of the big media deal announcement. There's no word on whether the library of AEW shows is going to be available on Max. Excuse me. That is a question that still is out there. No one, there's different perceptions as to how this might go. Kathleen Finch told the Hollywood Reporter that she's excited to welcome back the library to the service. So does that mean that you'll be able to go back and watch old episodes of Dynamite, that you'll be able to go back and watch pandemic era Dynamite? I don't know why you would. But the first, the first few episodes and so on, like that's still, the waters are still a little muddy on that one. And to be honest, like I don't know what is the value of that, because what is the value of the archive really? Is it too much trouble to put it up? Is it too much trouble to put it up? I talked about this on the podcast this week when I talked about preservation, right? The preservation of wrestling media. We just this week, these questions were raised when NXT moved to CW, and on the app, on the CW app, there was no sign of any NXT archives. Meanwhile, the NXT archives are off of Peacock, so it leaves us wondering, well, what's going on? Is there is the era of NXT before this, is it just going to be lost media at this point? We don't know, but it does lead to the question of whether or not these companies, these media companies, see any real intrinsic value in providing these archives and putting them up and maintaining them and making sure they're properly indexed and all of that. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it. Maybe that isn't part of the deal because they don't quite see the advantage. We'll see. This is the kind of thing that's going to develop over time. It would be nice, I'd say, to have access to the whole library of Dynamite and Collision and Rampage, but right now there's really no sign that this is going to happen outside of a passing comment by Kathleen Finch. So of course, one of the big things is how much is AEW getting paid. That's obviously one of the big talking points, one of the big question marks that we have here. And well, like we said, the base is at 150 million, right? Because that's what was said, is like it's above 150 million. That's the benchmark moving forward, right? And there have been reports going around. Sports Business Journal said 170 million. Joey Votes for Wrestle Votes said 185,000 per year. Andrew Zarian went and confirmed it as well. So that makes a Wrestle Votes report reliable. But Dave took to Wrestling Observer Radio earlier today, and he said that the AEW deal averages out to 150 million a year over 3 years, saying that it's currently less than 150. It's less than 185 million in year one, and it's more than 185 in year three, and also more in year four. But altogether, this is what Dave says, altogether, the deal comes out to 550 million total over 3 years. That's not bad, but like, that's actually really good. And then if you factor in this that, if you factor in this, the concept that Tony is shopping around for Shockwave, which is not going to be a part of Warner Bros. Discovery, which is likely going to be a part of another network. Well, he's going to get some money to produce that show. He's going to get more money to produce that programming, whatever it ends up to be, probably an extra hour, maybe something. We'd be surprised. Maybe it's another 2 hours. I don't know what to tell you. It could be anything. He's going to be getting more money for that. So, really, we're going to be very close to the 200 million a year here, which is insane if this does come to fruition, because that means that a wrestling company, 5 years into its life cycle, has been able to secure a deal that took like about 35 years for WWE to secure. That's kind of bonkers. That is actually bonkers, and it's healthy, and by all intents and purposes, it's making AEW solvent, profitable, second promotion in the history of the business to do that. I don't know, man. I'm gonna talk about this more in another occasion, because I do want to get to the review, but I've used opportunities like this one here to warn you about who you listen to and who you should be reading and who you should put your faith in when consulting, wrestling media, wrestling news, other shows like my own. I've often told you in other circumstances, when these outright liars and grifters, those who lie with impunity in regards to what AEW is all about and what it's developing, I told you to beware of them, to remove them from your life, essentially. Like, take them away from your timelines, remove them from your podcast feeds. There was no reason before, and there's even less reason now. You know who these people are. You know exactly who these people are, who have been saying for months that they don't see AEW getting a deal, that it's going to be dead by the end of the year, that AEW is a failure and will never be profitable. Tony Khan spends too much. He's going to be in trouble, so on and so forth. He's a money mark. All of this right now gets tossed aside. This is a man who has created a profitable wrestling promotion in North America in 2024 within 5 years. That is a remarkable feat. And there's a lot of people, and I'm going to include myself in this group, who never said, oh, well, I'm not sure AEW is getting a deal. oh, I'm not sure that it's going to work out, who are always confident that things were going to happen. And why? Why? Because the podcast that I listen to, myself, have abandoned the Monday Night Wars era from our minds. We've let that behind. We've understood that the wrestling business has evolved and things have changed. Not only the wrestling business, but the television business as well. And you have people still very much entrenched in that era, still very much positioned, set up to fight the good fight, but not no longer. These people have exposed themselves for being just terrible influences on this business and have proven that they bring nothing to the table, that they bring nothing of substance or value. Now, if they were critical, that's fine. But just grifting, lying, pretending that they know what they're talking about. Here's the thing. I'm going to pat myself slightly on the back here, because one of the criticisms that people like myself who have their podcast get from certain areas of the internet is that you have never worked in the business, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, something I can easily push back on, but I want to use that as an example for this point here as to why I'm patting myself on the back. For someone who's never worked in the business, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding as opposed to other people who have worked in the business and who are currently running admittedly successful podcasts on the premise that they know better than the people who think they know what they're talking about in pro wrestling, who are even operating in wrestling today. So for me to be told you don't know what you're talking about when a guy who used to work in the wrestling business, and not only work, but run a promotion, has completely fallen flat on his face with his predictions, his thoughts, his direction on how the media deal is going to work and the amount of money that AEW is going to get, completely deflated. I'm going to take a little, I am going to take a couple of self pats on the back, some self high fives here, because maybe I do know what I'm talking about. Because yeah, I've never worked in the business, but I've been following it enough to understand, and I've been reading about it, and I've been observing and making my own analysis, and I think I've been pretty consistent on that front. There's something pretty validating about it. About this situation, and I'm going to take it. And I'm going to take it because it's kind of nice to hear, or not hear, but it's kind of nice to realize that what you're doing is what you're doing and what you're talking about is consistent, that it makes sense, that you're not completely off track, that you're kind of grounded in reality. As the kids say, you're pretty based. It feels kind of good. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. Let's get into this show then, why don't we? The 5th anniversary show, of course, which was punctuated throughout the evening with little bumpers of special moments, fond memories, classic moments. I don't know exactly. I don't remember if they gave it a term, you know? I don't know if these are like classic memories from Dynamites of the past 5 years. You know, we had, I wrote them down. I don't think I forgot any. We had Jericho versus Ishii from November 2022, which is when, you know, Jericho's chest just got busted open because of all the chops, which was tremendous. John Moxley attacking Omega on the first Dynamite. That is unquestionably a classic moment in AEW history. We had Private Party defeating the Bucks as well. I don't know if that was just like to continue the story or anyway, or to establish the story that would come after the angle. But I mean, that's fine, right? I mean, that is a classic moment. That was something that, everyone considered it to be a very bold move. I don't know if it was, in retrospect, a good move, but it was definitely bold. Danielson versus Page, the big draw from December 2021. All big moments here. Hook versus Samoa Joe from earlier this year. I don't know if I'd consider that a fond memory. I didn't quite remember that one. Look, that's just me. Omega versus Danielson from September 2022. That is absolutely a classic. That is absolutely a classic AEW moment. Britt versus Thunder Rosa from March 2021, the Lights Out match. That's absolutely a defining moment in the company's history as well. And Ospreay versus MJF from earlier this year. I think it's a little early to be calling that a memory, but it's a big one. Like it was a hell of a match. It's one of my favorite matches that AEW put on TV this year. So I don't have a problem with it. So these were sprinkled throughout the evening. What are some memories that they forgot? I'd like you to chime in. If you're on YouTube, drop it in the comments. If you're over on Blue Sky, let me know. Like, chime in. I want to know if what you think. What memories? What fond classic AEW memories were left out here? Obviously, they weren't going to show CM Punk returning, which is a classic moment in. Like, that is a big moment in AEW history. The first dance in Chicago when CM Punk finally returned after months of speculation and rumor. But for obvious reasons, they're not showing that. Now, the show itself, if we finally get into it, what are we, 30 minutes in and we haven't talked about it yet? Tremendous. Warren never change. The show opens up with Pac and Claudio and Mox and Marina Shafir, and they're all cutting little promos. This is a pre-tape, I should mention. They're in a darkened parking lot, outdoor parking lot. Pac and Claudio are talking about Yuta and how it's time to man up, I guess, and then Marina Shafir says something in Romanian, I would assume. And then Jon Moxley pops in and he just cuts another absolutely tremendous, chilling promo. He says, I'm going to give you the opportunity to die on your shield. Fate's not going to give you a better opportunity than that. Fate's not going to put a better offer on the table. God, I thought that was such a good line. It's tremendous. And he says at Wrestle Dream, I'm going to officially relieve you of duty and send Daddy home for good. I'm like, oh my God. Once again, Jon Moxley is just like, when they figure out interesting creative for Mox, he is the most tremendous performer they have. Then you remember why he was the MVP of this company. Just reliable, unflappable. Jesus Christ. That was so good. Then we head to the ring. We're gearing up for Ospreay versus Ricochet. Backstage, Don Callis confronts Will Ospreay. Well, Will Ospreay's there. Let's give a little more context. He's there with Kyle Fletcher, and they're getting hype. And for some reason, Kyle Fletcher has a jersey of the Chicago White Sox. Now, as far as I understand, again, I don't follow Major League Baseball. I follow my local minor league baseball team, the Quebec Capitals. League champions again this year. Three-peat. But I don't follow Major League Baseball. But as far as I understand, with the people that are with the as far as I understand, thanks to people in my circles who do follow baseball and talk about it, the White Sox suck, right? Aren't they just like, but even back in the day when I followed sports a little closer than I do now, haven't the White Sox always stunk? Like, what? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. What a weird, what a weird wardrobe choice here. Anyway, that's when Don Callis shows up and he sort of confronts Will Ospreay and he says, "Kyle, we got to go. We got to go catch a plane." And I'm like, well, why'd you just arrive then? Like, this shit doesn't make sense. I hate this stuff. Like, this stuff really, this is the kind of little stuff that just annoys me because I'm like, look, the show just started. Like, you legitimately just arrived. They're acting like they work out of one same building every week, like at the corporate headquarters, right? It's like in Succession, where they always end up at all of this stuff happens like, in the headquarters. Well, not all this stuff, but you know what I mean? So, they walk into the place of business, it's like, we got to go because there's this big deal we have to close. Let's go now. Let's grab the private jet, and whatever the fuck. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, you guys legitimately just arrived. The show just started. You made the show call today and then you're like, no, we got to be gone by 8:05 Eastern because we have a flight to catch. To where? It doesn't matter. Like, who cleared this? Who said this was okay? Who said, yeah, Don, you can leave before the end of the show. No bigs. But then again, you've watched wrestling for a while, right? You know what's going on. You know the deal. You know the score. And they're just setting up an angle here. They're just trying to get Kyle out of the picture because Will's going to get fucked over and they don't want Kyle in the vicinity to help him out. That's all. You see where this is coming. I saw this angle coming a mile away at this point. Easy for you to say once the show is done. But yeah, no, if you hung out with me during Dynamite, you'd know because I would have said it out loud. I would have said, oh, well, this is what's happening here. I'd be like, goddamn, Warren, you've got such a nose for the business. I know. So that led us to the international title match. Will Ospreay and Ricochet, I guess, went to a disqualification. Will Ospreay retained by DQ. Isn't that what happened? Because Takeshita attacked Will Ospreay, if I remember correctly. But listen, let's talk about the match that got a bell pop, by the way. I liked this match a lot. I liked this match a lot, and I thought it was a great little match. But a great little match. But I feel like I can't get super enthusiastic about it, and I think this is my own damn fault. Like because I'm sitting here. Look, I'm sitting here, and I'm going to tell you that 4.25 stars, right? And anyone who listens to whenever I review shows or whatever, you know, if I'm giving a show 4.25 stars, I'm like clapping my hands. I got the tone of my voice raises, and I get really, really pumped up. I'm like, because this was a 4.25 star match is we're getting into great territory. This is a great match, but I guess I was expecting something else, but also not. Okay, was I expecting Will Ospreay and Ricochet to be as fast and quick and just full of flippy doos like they used to do? Of course not. These guys are like from the Korakuen match, Best of Super Juniors. That was like 10 years ago at this point, right? They're 10 years older, both of them. Maybe, I don't want to say they're both slower because Will Ospreay is not slow. But Ricochet, on top of this, on top of him being 10 years older and being a little older as well, but we're not talking like a huge difference, but being a little older than Ospreay and being on hiatus for the past 8 years or whatever, like Ospreay said, you've been on, God, I love that. You've been on hiatus. I mean, he being Ricochet, hasn't been really connected back to the way things are now. He hasn't, and it's not as if in WWE he was able to really spread his wings and go back and really shine with the incredible style that he used to have, that spectacular athletic style that he once had. I think he's slow, maybe age has slowed him down, but I think not getting any real reps in for so long in WWE is also something that maybe contributed to this. So I feel like when they were doing the Corkin tribute spot, right, at first, that the audience recognized and they got up on their feet, and when they did the final flip and landed in the superhero pose, and everyone went bonkers for it, everyone recognized what it was. Once they did that, what as they were doing that, I was looking at that and was like it's like a half step slow, and I was like, man, this needs to pick up. But then the rest of the match, they're doing the rest of the matches, it turns into something else, and it's much more hard hitting. They're pulling moves on each other. They're not trying to do what they used to do. They're doing something else because both guys are in a completely different spot in their careers, in their evolutions as pro wrestlers. We have literally seen Will Ospreay evolve from that kid into what he is today, which is an incredibly well-balanced out pro wrestler who can do just about anything, right? Ricochet, well, we saw him move from who he was back in that era to, well, I don't know what he could have done more in WWE than what he did. I mean, it's WWE, and that immediately sort of like pulls the reins on what you can do. So, that's a whole, and it's a whole other discussion as well. But the point being is that these are two different guys from what they used to be. So they gave us another type of match, something much closer to what they can do a lot more naturally. And I don't think them going back to the high-flying flip style that they used to do would necessarily be, if this had been the entirety of the match, I don't think that would have necessarily been well received. I don't think it would have been a good idea. I don't think it would have been a good idea or well received. So instead, doing what they did here, which was to turn it into a more hard-hitting affair, I think that was good. Now, did they do spectacular stuff? Yeah, you've got Ricochet doing shooting star presses. You have them jumping off of barricades and doing insane shit. The poison ranas and all of that. Like, I'm just like, this is all, like, of course there's still this signature stuff that is associated to both Ospreay and Ricochet. But as it stands, it's like, I'm watching it, and as the match progresses, I'm getting more and more into it. And I'm like, okay, they're cognizant of who they are, where they are. This is tremendous, and it is getting better, right? But, and the stuff that they're doing is spot on. It's crisp. It's good. And I'm into it. And as it starts to build, they do the dopey, the dopey double finish, the double draw, which I'm just sitting there and I'm like, what is going on? Why did they do this? And of course, it's Rick Knox, the ref, right? Rick Knox, in kayfabe is, I don't know if it's, truly in kayfabe, but, he's really the dumbest referee. Like, I think that's his thing. Is like, he's just a dumb referee. Because he, you saw the thing. They go to the draw with the double count stuff, which is stupid. And that's always something that infuriates me whenever they tease that, like in multi-man matches, where I'm like, what do you do? Don't do that. Like, don't do the double counts if two guys are getting pinned. Because then what do you do? And this is the situation here that So, the audience turns on it, and then they decide to continue the match instead. So I'm like, why? Well, I understand why they did it. Because their plan was to get the audience like into it. Like, oh yeah, light them up again, right? Light the fuse, as they say. And it worked. But then Konosuke Takeshita runs in to force a DQ. And I'm like, so what was the point? What? Now, don't get me wrong. Before you start explaining pro wrestling booking to me, okay, I understand they didn't want Will to lose the title here. I understand they didn't want Ricochet to take an L. Okay, like I understand. But this was a very convoluted way of getting to it, right? The draw, while it was interesting and got the audience excited about it, was completely unnecessary when you see how the match actually ended, or i.e. Konosuke Takeshita fucking shit up, right? So, like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what I should say, what I should do in regards to my overall feelings outside of, for what it was, for what we saw. I'm going high on it. 4.25 stars. I think it was really that good, and it was getting even better. And what we had was already tremendous. And I'm kind of bummed that it stopped there. Now, does this mean that we're going to get Ospreay versus Ricochet at a pay-per-view? Yes. They're not going to let this one slide. In fact, we're getting the triple threat, the three-way match at Wrestle Dream. And I'm kind of like, oh, okay. I would prefer singles matches between all these guys, but you all know my thoughts on three-way matches, especially when it comes to title matches. I would have much preferred singles matches between all of these three guys. Get yourself a little series going. Have yourself a mini tournament if need be. You know what I mean? Just have a little round robin between the three. A little series. Takeshita versus Ospreay. Takeshita versus Ricochet. Ricochet versus Ospreay. Like, I don't know. Anything other than this. You know what I mean? It sounds like I'm really down on the match, but I'm mostly down on the finish. But I thought the match was tremendous. Like I said, 4.25 star. And they have another one in them. I know. Look, it's fine. It's fine. Let's move on. How about we go straight to the main event? We'll go straight to the main event. These are really the best two matches on the show, and the ones that I really feel like are really interesting and that I really, really want to talk about. So I think this is what we'll do. We'll just go straight to the main event of where Bryan Danielson defeated Kazuchika Okada. Now, I didn't think this match was as good as the Will Ospreay Ricochet stuff. In fact, I think this is out of the three Okada Danielson matches that we've had, this was unquestionably the weakest of the three. First and foremost, I'm not even bothered by Okada, by the slow start, right? This was a long match, and this, maybe because I've seen multiple Okada matches in the past, I was not surprised that Okada starts out slow, and I'm like, oh, we're going to have this discourse again. Okada matches, we're going to go back to this old chestnut here, that Okada matches, are slow, right? They're a slow, methodical build. We're going to go back to that. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So that's kind of what we got. There was also the added psychology, if you ask me, of Okada wanting to stretch out time for the first 20 minutes because his title was on the line. And please, let's not do that stipulation ever again. Let's not do that ever again. I don't think it, ultimately it didn't matter, but I don't want to harp too much. But one thing that we could do more, let's say for their anniversary shows, why don't you have a title versus title match on your anniversary shows moving forward? Or a champion versus champion and one of the titles is on the line. Kind of like what New Japan does for their anniversary shows, right? Which is typically, the world champion versus the junior champion, or the heavyweight champion versus the junior heavyweight champion. That'd be fun. Yeah, I think that would be a nice color to add to Dynamite. A little something you can lift off of New Japan, and no one will blink an eye, right? No one will be like, "Are you copying New Japan?" It doesn't matter. But look, I really like the final part of this of the match. I thought it was, I thought it started to pick up, especially when I start seeing Kazuchika Okada doing some new moves. That's always exciting, Pulling out the money clip, not as exciting. And I think this was the first time he actually used it in AEW, right? Him doing a Busaiku knee, yeah, it's pretty dope. And like a little more Okada, Okada trying stuff out, But like the match was solid. It was well put together, right? But I think the problem here is that, and a lot of people have put forth this criticism, and it's not one I've necessarily subscribed to, but I will admit that I have seen the effects. Like I've outright seen the effects in this match here. The criticism that people have been using in regards to Okada is that he's not well booked, that he's been booked to not feel special, not feel like one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, bit of a comedy guy, and he hasn't been having great matches. I believe his match with Pac was probably his best match in AEW, when this is a guy who should be having the best matches in AEW every time he goes out there. Not unlike Danielson. When Danielson goes out there to have a singles match, you're rubbing your hands together, you're going, here we go. And Okada should be the same way, because it's Kazuchika Okada, okay? And I understand he's doing the heel gimmick and whatnot, and I understand all of that, but the gimmick shouldn't keep him from having great matches. This was not a great match. I thought it was a very good match, but it's not a great match. And the ceiling for these two guys, the floor for these two guys, Danielson, Okada, together in a ring, is great. That's the floor. And I don't think I'm being harsh here. I don't think I'm being overly critical. You legitimately have two of the greatest wrestlers working out there in the world today in the same ring. Your baseline is great. That's your floor. I don't think that's a savage take, but let's move back. The point I'm trying to make here, or that I want to make, is that because of how poorly he's been booked and a bit of a joke, and not necessarily feeling like Kazuchika Okada, we get Danielson Okada being slapped together last minute for this card, which I do not have a problem with. I don't care. I don't need weeks of stories or I don't need weeks of stories or video packages or endless promos to make me understand that Danielson versus Okada is cool. Now, if I'm running a promotion that is struggling to put people in the building, I am not waiting 2 days before the event to announce the match. That's something else. I digress. But what I found was that people were not buzzing, not around where I hang out. I didn't have people losing their minds like they lost their minds when this match was made for Forbidden Door in Toronto 2 years ago. I didn't see people losing their minds when it happened again at the Tokyo Dome. I didn't see people doing that either. Here I'm like, It's like another match. And that's because I sincerely feel like the sheen of the Rainmaker has been dulled a little bit because of how he's been booked on a regular basis. And you can tell me, and this is also something that I believe, you can tell me that this is what Okada wants to do. I think he's been, doing the Rainmaker thing for so long in Japan. He's kind of happy to be here in North America and can do something else, something completely different. Just have a little fun, a little goofiness, make his, pop his pals backstage. That's fine. But especially if I'm running this business and if I'm paying Kazuchika Okada the reported amounts of money that he's being paid, I'm having a sit down with him. I'm like, look, buddy, this ain't it. I want to see, what does it take? What do you need? What does it take for me what does it take to get Kazuchika Okada going here? I kind of buy into that. I haven't hated the how Okada's been treated on a lot of things that he's been doing, but there's a lot of things that haven't been good. And here's the most critical part, I think. And this is kind of where I'm at in my analysis of Kazuchika Okada. When there were rumors that both he and WWE, when there were rumors going around that both WWE and AEW were trying to sign him, I think one of everyone's greatest fears is that he end up in WWE because he would become a watered down version of the Rainmaker. That's what everyone was afraid of because everyone sort of considered that AEW would not take him down that path. Yet nonetheless, I feel right now that this is a watered down version of the Rainmaker. Now, if you want to tell me to poo-poo off, fuck off, Warren, that's fine. But there is hours upon hours upon hours of tape that exist of Kazuchika Okada wrestling that will demonstrate very clearly what he used to be in New Japan as opposed to what he is in AEW right now. And if you compare and contrast the two, if you have watched Kazuchika Okada matches from New Japan in the past, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, you're not in a position to disagree. You're in a position to listen and say, oh, he can be better than this? Yes, he can. I'm glad if you're enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. I think it kind of stinks. But if you're enjoying this, I will say to you, imagine how much you would enjoy it if Kazuchika Okada was in his full powers. If he was absolutely the Rainmaker that dominated pro wrestling in Japan for years upon years. Trust me, because we didn't get him last night, and we haven't been getting him in general in AEW either. It was a good match. Look, I ended up giving this 3 3/4 stars. And I guess if I were to give a theme to the show, it was, I guess the theme is under-delivering, right? Where I have these great wrestlers, like these absolute great wrestlers, undeniable great wrestlers, in 2 separate matches, coming together. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, why am I feeling unsatisfied? Isn't that weird? Isn't it weird? And even with the Ospreay Ricochet match, which I will tell you is great, but my ultimate criticism is it could have been something else. And maybe I'm too high on it. I don't know, but there's stuff I really liked on it. And Danielson Okada, I think it didn't have the juice. Now, am I going to harp any more on this and talk about this at every given turn that Okada Danielson was, not a 4-star affair? No, because again, maybe because I see a lot of Japanese wrestling and whatnot, and sometimes, you have this incredible pairing, and sometimes they'll have a slip up. I often talk about this on my New Japan reviews. By the way, the Destruction in Kobe review should be available for everyone if you want to watch that. But I often say, was This is one of my constants. Was this as great as the match they had over on this date? No, but it's still one. It's still a great one, or it's still this and there's a part of us that's complaining with our belly fulls at the same time, and I will also admit to that, where I'm sitting here watching a 3 3/4 star match and I'm bitching about it. Like, that's the definition of entitlement right there. At least I'm aware. I'm self-aware enough to know what I'm doing here. But I'm here to, you come to me, you want the reviews, you wanted what I thought. Well, this is what I thought. Very good match, but Jesus Christ. And after the match, we had the angle where after the match, we had the and by the way, I hated the finish. I fucking hated the finish with the messed up slide. The what do you call it? The backslide. The messed up, and it wasn't pretty either. And then Okada sort of blames Claudio and Pac, and I guess Shafir was there too, coming to ringside. That distracted him. It's a distraction finish. Like, this is fucking Kazuchika Okada. What are we doing? By the way, this was Kazuchika Okada's first pinfall loss in AEW. I'm just putting that out there. You do what you want with that type of information. What I'm going to say here is that, look, they hadn't been pushing that he was undefeated or that he had never been pinned. Like, they hadn't made it a thing, right? But nonetheless, the first time that Okada loses is with a banana peel win by Danielson, it seems. Anywho, the angle after was okay. I thought that was good. Pac and Claudio get in and they set up Danielson for Mox, who saunters in afterwards, and he gets on the mic and he says it's none of this is about him. None of this is what he wants. He's planning something much bigger than himself, and everything he's doing is for something bigger than himself. And I'm like, oh no, we're doing an Exalted One angle. We're doing a mystery man angle. This is what we're doing. We're doing something bigger for someone. And I'm like, oh my God. And now what? See, I understand this. We're all going to fall into this trap where the angle is going to be intriguing and people are going to come up with scenarios and they're going to be wondering, what could this be? Who could this be? And we're all going to get really intrigued as to what is Jon Moxley's motivation? Who is he doing this for? And we're going to come up with all these scenarios, and the payoff is likely going to be extremely disappointing. The payoff is likely going to be a wet fart. And who, pray thee, in AEW right now could be someone giving Jon Moxley orders? This is going to be a very weird payoff. I am trepidation is the word of the day, folks. Look it up. I'm feeling trepidation in regards to the execution of this angle. I'm not stoked, and I'm like, and honestly, look, this is where my brain's going. I'm like, oh my God, it's Shane McMahon, isn't it? He's doing it for someone bigger, someone, it's a war. What is he fighting for? For fighting for whom? What is he trying to prove? I need the title, blah, blah, blah. It's Shane McMahon, right? It's Shane McMahon. Is it going to be Shane McMahon? Oh God, it's going to be Shane McMahon, isn't it? Not excited about this. Anyway, Wheeler Yuta runs in. He's got a hammer and he chases off the goons, and then Moxley sort of stands across him and he threatens to swing at Mox. And you kind of feel with Yuta's really awkward body language that he might turn and attack Danielson. I was like, oh, he's going to swing the hammer at Danielson. He's absolutely swinging the hammer at Danielson, right? But he didn't. He didn't swing the hammer at Danielson. So I'm like, oh, okay. But they still might do it. They set up a match, a very weird match for next week, right? For next Dynamite. Danielson and Yuta versus Claudio and Pac, like the trios champs on different sides. Like we just might, because Yuta never really beat anyone up. Like he took a couple of licks, but he didn't swing the hammer. So he could still be in this this crisis. Which side am I going to be on? My mom and dad are fighting. Which side do I pick? And they're doing this on Title Tuesday. This is tremendous. Got Title Tuesday, which is, you'd assume, a show where titles are put on the line, but we're throwing in this match here. The first match we announced has nothing to do with titles. Never change, AEW. Never change. So I mean, I like the post match. I think they're doing a good job building to Mox Danielson. Mox needs to get some heat in though. Danielson needs to get some heat in. Mox has really been in control of everything, so we need to do something about that. As for the rest of the show, Mercedes, let's go back to the very top after Will Ospreay and Ricochet. Mercedes Moné gets interviewed backstage by Renee Paquette, and she says, here are my favorite moments from AEW's history, Dynamite's history, and it's just a montage of her, and MVP shows up to give her his business card, and I'm like, I don't hate this. I don't hate this idea in the slightest. We're gonna breeze through a lot of this here because there's one thing I think that I'm gonna really sink my teeth into, but the rest we're sort of gonna breeze through because time. We get the TV time segment with Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith. He basically challenges Mark Briscoe. Well, also Jericho's the only guy who talks about the media deal on TV, so that's one thing. He challenges Mark Briscoe to a match for the title, since he pinned him last week, I believe, in the trios match, in the Texas Tornado match. Briscoe comes in, then puts him over as a legend, and he says that he would love to have his head on his wall when he beats him. Chris Jericho then goes a little dark, says that if he wants to beat the Learning Tree, he doesn't think he can do it, but maybe his brother Jay could have. Yes, they finally decided to go there. Briscoe immediately, his demeanor changes, and Jericho says, everyone knows, I don't think you can beat me, because everyone knows Mark will never be as good as Jay was. And that's interesting because, look, this is all very real. Of course, the death of Jay Briscoe is the realest thing you could come up with, but the criticisms regarding Mark back in the day were exactly that. Jay was always considered to be the bigger star, was always considered to be more of a star, a better worker, and Mark was always like, the little bro, basically. And so, this got very real, very fast, I'll tell you. Briscoe uppercuts him and tells Jericho to keep his brother's name out of his mouth, and then sets out, and we'll be getting that title shot at Wrestle Dream. If you want my thoughts, listen, I don't have an opinion on. Let me say that again, because I do have an opinion. And here's my opinion. It's wrestling, and there was a time where I would be a lot more outraged about this kind of stuff. I would be. And I am, but the more I have read about the history of pro wrestling, the more I've actually talked to pro wrestlers and understand how they, how things go. This all makes sense, and it wasn't a question of if they do it, it was a question of when. They're doing it now. So, if they're not upset about it, I'm not going to get upset about it. and it doesn't particularly it doesn't particularly offend me. In fact, I'm like, well, I mean, these are wrestlers being wrestlers doing wrestler things. They've figured all of this out before coming out, so it's all fine. Ultimately, is what I'm trying to say. Now, I know a lot of people are super upset about it, and I think a lot of people are super upset about it because it was Chris Jericho. I honestly think that the most upset people are upset because it was Chris Jericho, and if it was anyone else, they wouldn't be as upset. I'm not saying they wouldn't be upset, but I'm saying they wouldn't be as upset. And I think the fact that it's Jericho is adding some salt to the wound. And again, like, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't feel upset, period, because of what's happening here. If this affects your sensibilities, well, that's fine. And go ahead and write a letter to the editor and make your voices known. That's fine. For me, it's like, this is pro wrestling, and at some point these types of things always happen. They always pop up, and there's other situations there's other situations than this that I will get offended at if need be. Darby Allin cuts a promo. He's in a junkyard, talks about getting spit on a bus, and then he makes an open challenge for WrestleDream. All right. Adam Page defeats Juice Robinson. They fight on the ramp before the bell, go into the audience, so on and so forth, set up a table. Juice is splashing beer in Page's face and uses a popcorn bucket on him. And I'm like, Juice, come on, these people paid $18 a piece for all this shit. What are you doing here? Good. I enjoyed this match. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't hate it. What did I give this? I gave this the old 3.25 stars. I think that's fine. Hangman gets the win with the buckshot lariat after nailing a low blow while the referee was distracted. And then after the match, well, you have Jay White, who makes his return to a huge reaction from the crowd, and he goes after Hangman, and there we go. That might be something that might be a feud that we have here. Yeah, that might be a feud. Who knows? Or it might be just blown off at WrestleDream, or we might do something more. I don't know. Renee Paquette is backstage. Jack Perry arrives in his scapegoat bus. He drives up. Katsuyori Shibata walks up to him, challenges him to a match at WrestleDream for the TNT title. Perry says he thinks about it. Katsuyori Shibata turns his back, and Perry attacks him from behind and says he accepts. Alrighty. We get a Danielson pre-tape. He cuts promo on Mox, and then Okada for the match later on in the evening. Britt Baker defeated Serena Deeb. I thought this was fun. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed this. I thought it was a good match. Again, I sort of want to breeze through it because we are going overtly long here. But yeah, I thought this was really good, and I thought Deeb did a great job trying to ground Britt, with all sorts of moves and locks and stretch mufflers and whatnot. And towards the end, they're dropping Germans and air raid crashes, and Britt does an avalanche air raid crash. So I think this is all good. And she gets the win with the lockjaw thing. After the match, Deeb goes after Britt, but Queen Aminata comes in for the save. Nice to see her up on AEW soil. I have very high hopes for Queen Aminata. I really do. So she goes after Aminata. Aminata goes after Deeb. Deeb hits the bricks. And, Britt seemed very indifferent to Queen Aminata coming to save her. It's hard to say. I don't know if it was a shoot or not. I couldn't tell you, is what I'm trying to say. Renee Paquette is backstage with Hook. Because they had said in the evening, they had posted it on social media, and then said during the evening that Taz wasn't there because he had been attacked in the parking lot and his knee was screwed up. So then they have Hook here backstage, and he's mad. He's going. You can tell he's mad because he's breathing hard while his nose is crinkled. And he basically says that he's going to come after whoever went after his dad. Oh, all right. Christian Cage cuts a promo, pre-tape as well. Then we have Mariah May being interviewed backstage. She starts talking shit about Willow Nightingale, who shows up. She's like, hey, you got something to say? And they bicker and they start fighting and they get pulled apart. Well, so I guess we're setting a little something up for Wrestle Dream. Private Party defeated the Iron Savages in a squash. After the match, they challenged the Bucks. Now, this is why, this is exactly why we need the rankings in AEW. This is a team that for the past 2 to 3 weeks has been effectively goobered out by Mox's group. Their job, along with Commander, was to eat shit to establish Mox's group as a bunch of killers. And they finally got their match against Claudio and Pac and Wheeler, right? And they ate shit in the match. It wasn't even all that competitive. It's like, I don't understand I don't understand how these two dudes suddenly feel they can come out and go, we can challenge for the tag team titles. There was a time in AEW that this sort of stuff mattered. That the wins and losses, the win-loss record did have an impact on title shots and the like. But they scrapped all of that. They got rid of all of that. And now it's just like any other promotion where it's just like, oh, well, whose turn is it? It's this turn. These people who have zero heat because they've been jobbed out and geeked out for weeks. And we can even talk about months at this point. When is the last time Private Party has ever even been remotely relevant, or where people are excited to have Cassidy and Quen going, yeah, let's go. These guys have no heat. Why? Because they haven't been built into contendership status. Why? Because there's no more rankings. So you can just do the merry-go-round. Oh, it's gonna be these guys' turn. Oh, it's gonna be these guys. Oh, these guys are next. It doesn't matter. That's why the rankings were important, were a significant way for AEW to distinguish itself from the competition. But now it's just the same. It's just the same. Same old shit. And the Bucks come out and they do let's do it tonight. Oh, no, turns out we're not going to do it. Limited dates, whatever the fuck. And then Private Party get geeked out by Jack Perry, who blindsides them. I'm like, because Private Party right now are booked like geeks. So it all makes sense. And the fact that they're challenging for tag team titles does not make sense. This sucks. Shibata comes in for the save. Doesn't matter. We have MVP backstage with Renee Paquette. He says he has a big announcement to make tonight. Prince Nana shows up. He says, hey, you know what? You said some spicy things. I like that. You said some spicy things about swerving myself last week. Do you know I used to be a professional wrestler? I'm like, hell yeah. Oh yeah, I'm into it. The big in-ring return of Prince Nana? Yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. I was like, yeah, I'm into it. But no, that seemed to have been squashed because, look, the big news is that Shelton Benjamin is there. He showed up next to Prince Nana. Shelton Benjamin is there. I'm still on the fence with all of this former Hurt Business guys stuff. I'm still on the fence. I don't know what, Bobby Lashley, Fightful confirmed earlier today that Bobby Lashley has signed with AEW. Okay, great. That to be expected, right? That was fine. I'm not into this. Like, I explained on the podcast this week why I think it's a good idea, why it makes sense, but I'm not into it. It's just something that does not speak to me. Now, can they just spin all of this around and make it really interesting? Sure, absolutely. And I think MVP has been a compelling voice so far. So I'm not hating it. I'm not sitting here saying this stinks. If something stinks, I'll tell you. Private Party challenging for the world title stinks, okay? This does not stink. I'm just not into it because I fear what's coming afterwards. I fear what this, I like Shelton Benjamin and all. And I know people, and he has a great following online, and he seems like a tremendously nice dude. But, people are sharing gifs of him back in like 2005 when he was in his prime. Like, can he do what he used to do? I don't know. The answer is likely not. He can't not. Then again, like, this is a guy that everyone has always liked. It's fine. I don't have necessarily a problem with it. Look, AEW is flush with cash. Tony can do whatever the fuck he wants with his money, honestly. And even though I myself am not into this yet, they have all the opportunities in the world to drag me in, to win me over. I feel like I'm someone that this Hurt Business stuff has to win over, or whatever they're going to be called. They have to win me over. I'm open to that. I'm not shut down. I'm not closed down. I'm not sitting here with my arms crossed saying, this sucks, I don't want to see it anymore. Win me over. And that's all I can say at this point. I'm just not into it. That led us to the main event, and this leads us to the end of the AEW Dynamite review for the 5th anniversary show. So a show that had so many quibbles for me that I can't outright recommend it. I think you should watch the first match. I think you should watch the final match and make up, because those are really the ones that truly had the most substance. Other than that, I think like everything sort of happened and drifted, and it was a weird way to celebrate 5 years. It was a very strange way to celebrate 5 years. I'll be talking more about the deal tonight on stream and next week on the podcast. So be sure you're subscribed and following all of that. There you go. Go watch Randy Orton and get back to me, and I'll see you next time.